Brisbane, where Julia Gillard is speaking to ABC Local Radio.
So in the social democratic tradition, we're a Labor Party. We started out with our links with organised labour and, of course, here in Queensland, the Australian Workers' Union and the birthplace in Barcaldine. After all of these years, more than 100 years of existence, I'm in the mainstream of that Labor tradition. So it's about how you can grow your wealth, grow your nation's wealth, but also share it fairly so you don't leave people behind.
Do you describe yourself as a progressive, inverted commas?
I'm certainly a progressive in the sense that, I believe in progress, I believe in shaping the modern world. There's no point hankering for yesterday, whether you remember yesterday fondly or whether you, didn't like your own personal past. However you remember yesterday, there's never any going back there. So you've always got to be striving for progress and change and the shaping of change. The future's going to happen. The only question is, are we going to shape it or are we just going to let it happen to us?
I've always wanted to know what we're progressing towards. When someone describes themselves as a progressive, what are we progressing towards? What's the end point?
Well, for me, there's never going to be an end point because, I hope, there's never going to be an end to human progress. Human beings will always strive for better, to do better tomorrow than they've done today. I think that that's deeply within us. For me, therefore, that direction of change has to be how we can do things better, how we can be a wealthier country, how we can be a fairer country, how we can offer people the benefit of better jobs, how we can make sure all of our kids get included in the life of our nation by getting a truly great education. That, for me, is better. You take your sort of core values with you, so we'll always be driven by a love of country and a love of family. Those things won't change, but the future will be different from the past, so let's get out and make it rather than just drift into it.
We don't call it patriotism here, do we? We call it a love of country rather than we like the term patriotism, do we?
Well, I would describe myself as a proud patriot.
Would you?
Absolutely.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I love this country and I would do everything within my power to defend it and keep it safe. I don't think we're into the showy sort of patriotism that perhaps we associate with some American war films.
Yes.
We're not necessarily a hand-on-heart kind of patriotism, but I think we feel love of country very deeply.
Is it true that the Labor Party sees itself as sort of an Australian version of the US Democratic Party? Is that accurate?
We're sister political parties, so at an organisational level we, exchange policies and views and ideas, and young people come and go and have a turn with the Democrats, come here and have a turn with the Labor Party. We're very different countries though. I mean, despite so much that binds us together with our American friends, culturally we're very different places, and I think that shows in the political tradition of parties. I've always thought when you look to Americans, fundamentally, at base, the American culture is one of individualism rather than collectivism. Our culture, at base, I believe, is one of mateship and fairness and solidarity.
So we're more collective?
I think we are. And it's a quote I've used often, but I think it's just so summarising of the Australian outlook. The great war historian Dawes, who wrote about Changi, made the observation that right down to the, absolute depths of starvation and death in the camps, people kept their national identities. So the Americans were the great individualists. The British had their class structure hold, and he said about the Australian men in those prisoner of war camps that right down to the last they were trying to form male bonded welfare states. That is, they were trying to be mates and look after each other. I think that is the Australian identity, and because that identity is different to the American identity, the way in which the Labor Party here comes at political issues is different to the way in which the Democrats do, even though we've got a lot in common.
Is it true that the Labor Party here is trying to paint Tony Abbott as a sort of a Mitt Romney figure, a Mitt Romney type? In other words, an Australian Republican, if you like.
No, we're just trying to paint Tony Abbott as Tony Abbott. That's enough.
What does it mean to be Labor versus tribal Labor? We heard Paul Keating say this. I think he was talking about Kevin Rudd, I think, in that context. He said he's Labor but not tribal Labor. What's the difference?
Oh, look, I'm not sure what Paul had in his mind, and I wouldn't want to reinterpret his words. For me, being a member of the Labor Party means you've not only publicly said, I have this set of values and these are the values that drive me, but it does mean that you've bought into a, sense of belonging, a sense of history, a sense of collectivism, which binds you together and which means that you'll always be there, barracking for your team, barracking for Labor. I've been an active member of the Labor team since I was a very young person, and
I've always assumed that was tribal Labor in a sense.
Look, I think, maybe the word tribal is about how emotionally or deeply you feel those bonds. I don't know how Paul meant it,
okay.
But I think it's, it's the sense that there's a lot of emotion and a lot of self in your belief in Labor values.
What principle or value would you die in a ditch for? I don't necessarily mean policy, not the NDIS, not the Gonski Review, but a fundamental principle on which your life, your worldview stands. What would you die in a ditch for?
I think that fundamental principle would be fairness. It offends me when people are treated unfairly, and it offends me if there is anything that says someone gets a lesser go, a lesser chance because they come from more humble origins than someone else. I'm a believer in equality. I'm a believer in merit. I think you should get to shape your life. I am not a believer in inherited privilege. I don't think that just because, your mum and dad are wealthy people and they've been able to roll out advantages to you, that you should get any better go in life than a kid that comes from the poorest home in the worst suburb in our nation.
Then let me ask you, what was the most important thing you learnt from your dad? He passed away last year. What did you learn from him, the most important thing?
Well, I think it was probably that. He too was offended by unfairness, and he in his life had lived through unfairness. He grew up in a coal mining village, in a coal mining family. His father was injured, so he had to work on the surface, which was the less remunerated work. He was one of 7 kids. He passed in the 11 plus exams, as they had them then, so highly that he was being offered a scholarship, but his family couldn't afford not to have him working. So at 14 he went out to work. Now he had a great life. He built a great life for himself. He came to Australia. He loved the work that he did in this country. He got to raise his 2 daughters, me and my sister. He got to see his grandkids succeed. So he had a great life. But he could have had a different life if he hadn't had that unfairness dealt to him, and that was very burned into him. Not a sense of bitterness about his own past, but that was wrong and that shouldn't happen to anybody else, and he was certainly damn sure it wasn't going to happen to me or my sister.
Was he the biggest influence on your thinking? It's often said that a father's relationship with his daughter is a really pivotal connection, a really pivotal relationship. Was it for you?
Absolutely. Both of my parents are incredibly important to me. My mother is in Adelaide. She's an older lady now. She just turned 85, and she's very, very precious to me. But in terms of shaping my ideas, I think Dad played the biggest role. He was someone who was always interested in current affairs in the world, would talk to you about it, and it was a very, very strong bond, and, continues in my heart to be one.
Now, he was a Baptist, and you rejected that Protestant Christianity. Why? What was it about it that you are or have rejected?
Well, I think over time my father moved away from the church too. I mean, the church played a big role.
This is the Baptist church?
The Baptist church.
Yeah.
So, yes, Welsh Baptists. So, the defining belief of Baptists is the role of John the Baptist, the belief in adult baptism, that you should make a choice as an adult as to whether or not you want to be baptised. Baptists don't hold with drinking, that kind of thing. You get very strict variations of, Baptists that sort of repudiate entertainment and amusement and dancing and that kind of thing.
Yes.
We weren't quite down that track. But, my parents were brought up that way. I think for them the church played the biggest role when we first migrated to Australia, and it was a good place to go and find Australian friends. They didn't know anybody except one family in Adelaide, and so church was the place they made connections. In their later lives, both of them have drifted away from that, and in my younger life, in my I would have said early 20s, I made an active decision that, you know, whilst the values meant a lot to me, and they continue to mean a lot to me, the formal elements of religion didn't capture my heart, my soul, my mind.
Prime Minister Julia Gillard is my guest. Do you ever feel misunderstood?
Oh, yes.
When?
Oh, by the media cycle that you refer to. I mean, I think there is a lot in this time of change in the media industry that pushes the cycle towards, you know, more schlock, more horror. And I think we tend to look at this as if it's about us and about Australia and about today's politics here. Actually, it's about a change across the world in the media industry. So more and more content, more and more things. Even you and I today, we've had a picture taken so you can tweet it. There's a TV camera here. More and more content, more and more things. And that means you need more and more drama or you can't sustain it. So even the simplest things get puffed up in a way that's really pretty absurd.
Is there a particular event that really annoys you? Now's your chance. Now's your chance to a particular event where you felt you've been utterly misunderstood and you haven't been treated fairly. Is there a particular moment where you say,
how long have you got?
Just give me one. Just give me one.
We'll be here all day.
Just give me one.
Oh, look, the cabinet reshuffle. I thought the media reaction to that was absurd. Two wonderfully competent ministers who have decided to go and do something else with their lives, seamlessly replaced by two fantastically competent ministers. And this is written as crisis. Like, excuse me, you know, I'm sure every day here at the ABC you hear about someone around the nation who's decided, I've loved my job at the ABC, I've been here 10, 15, 20 years, now I'm going to go and do X, and guess what, Sally's got the promotion. And you all go, that's, you know, it's sad to lose Bill, but Sally will be fantastic. And does anybody write up, gee, the ABC's in crisis, Bill's gone?
We're always in crisis, baby. We're always in crisis.
Are we going to have one of those funding discussions now?
Please, yes.
You know, so that was complete silliness.
It's 14 minutes to 9. My guest is Prime Minister of Australia, Julia Gillard. When the doors of the Cabinet close, there's no cameras there and everyone can speak freely, who's the intellectual in your Cabinet?
Oh, look, I think...
Is there one?
Oh, well, it depends what you mean by intellectual. If you wanted to do, I guess, the you know, well-read, you know, understanding of the artistic world, understanding of the world in general, you would go Bob Carr, Simon Crean. If you wanted to go, you know, a mastery of the law, you would go Mark Dreyfus. You know, if you wanted to talk about connection and touch with working people, you know, Wayne Swan, Jenny Macklin, Bill Shorten, the list goes on. So, you know, people are different in their presentation.
You're being way too diplomatic, Prime Minister.
No, but I genuinely value my colleagues a great deal. They're all different and, you know, bring a different perspective, and that's what's good about frank discussions around a cabinet table. I specifically say to my cabinet colleagues, I don't expect people to come in and just automatically agree with each other. What I do expect is for them to give the best of themselves and to operate what I call a sort of positive climate, where if something's said, people don't go, oh, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. They actually listen, think, take it in, and then strive to have a positive conversation.
Is there a person in Cabinet who privately you sidle up to and say, mate, I need a reality check? In other words, a confidant, someone that you feel particularly you can trust, who'll tell you as it is, personally to you privately? Oh,
I think, you know, because I am someone who welcomes honest discussions. I mean, lots of my colleagues come and have frank conversations.
But we all have almost like a work, not a mentor, but a workplace, a sounding board you go to who just somehow gets you, whether or not they even know you terribly, but they somehow get you. Is there one of those people there?
Look, I wouldn't say there's one person there. I would say that there are a number, and I do try and, you know, keep the door open to all of my colleagues, not just my cabinet colleagues, but, you know, colleagues in the Labor team and the broader Labor movement and the community generally, to come and pitch up an idea, and I always strive to treat people seriously and respectfully. I don't go, oh, that's crazy, or why are you wasting my time?
Okay. Do you knit in cabinet? We know you knit.
No, I don't knit in cabinet.
Does anyone else knit?
No one knits in cabinet.
So you're the only knitter in cabinet?
Oh, look, sorry, I don't believe anybody else knits in cabinet in their spare time, and certainly no one knits in the cabinet room. We've got a few more things to do.
So if that happens, you need to tweet it. Take a photo and tweet it.
Well, you can't take because of the security arrangements, you can't have your mobile phone in the cabinet room because it's all been swept and cleared and all the rest of it.
You tweet, but I think reluctantly, don't you?
I do tweet. No, not reluctantly. I think it's got its limits. I think it's a fantastic way of engaging people and getting quick information out there and giving insights into your day. There are some things that are too serious and too weighty to be dealt with by Twitter. I joked with you before, you cannot put your whole strategy for the war in Afghanistan in, 100 and something characters. Some things require, bigger engagements than that. But I think Twitter, those things, they're a new way, at their best, they're a new way of enlivening conversations in our democracy. At their worst, they're just terrible, anonymous ways of putting vile things about people out in the public domain. I hope, it ends up that the good overwhelms the bad.
I'm worried about the Freudian elements of Twitter, that, there's always the subconscious seems to come out, and I'm paranoid I'll end up on the front page of some paper for saying something inappropriate at some time in here. So I don't.
I certainly think that, the old saying, my mum would say something like, if you're going to write a letter in anger, put it aside, read it again 24 hours later, and then think about whether or not you want to put it in the post box. I think for the Twitter world, there certainly is a tweet at haste, repent at leisure. Maybe if you're really steamed up, put it aside, come back to it later.
Wise woman. Which cartoonist in the country gets you right? All sorts of cartoonists draw you. Who gets you right?
Oh, I was always a fan of Mark Knight in the Herald Sun. I've actually got one of his cartoons of me in my office, which is a profile, so of course it's got an extraordinarily large nose, and people come into the office and just look a little bit bemused that I would have something like that up there, but I've always thought it was, a good cartoon representation. Look, I wouldn't really pick one. There are lots of days the cartoons just don't grab me, and then there will be one day when you say, that has caught a moment in politics just incredibly well. And I think, that's the beauty of cartooning. It'd be a great job. It'd be the best job in politics if you could draw. Unfortunately, I can't draw.
I'm getting the wind up, but I want to squeeze something else in. When do you listen to Tim, your partner? When do you really listen to him, feedback-wise? Oh,
I listen to him on... he's got a great... emotional sense of how people are feeling. I think it probably comes from, long days in the hairdressing business where, some people will go to their hairdressers and just get their hair cut, others will go and spill out every trouble in their life. So we'll go to a function or an event and he'll come back and talk about the emotional state he thinks someone's in, and he'll be very incisive about it.
I have to let you go, sadly. I've got some more personal questions I want to ask you, but another time. Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Prime Minister Julia Gillard.